Hello everyone, Marty Jobson here. Welcome to Micro Minute. Now, today's subject matter was actually a suggestion from a friend of mine, Sarah, and she said, how do RFID tags work? So, I've got a couple. Let's get into it. Right, here we go. So, what we have here is two RFID tags. I'll put them over here so we can see them properly. So this one is a sort of a slightly more robust one, a bigger one, that's normally hanging off a key fob. And this one actually I use for tapping in and out at the Otley maker space. And you might have one of these for work or something like that, or for opening doors even, you can use them. This one though, which looks just like a barcode, but when you turn it over, the other side, there's all this sort of metal gubbins here going on. And what this is, this actually was stuck to the packaging for some razor blades that I bought. And it's the sort that shops use to stop you, well, quite frankly, stealing things. Because if they don't inactivate this, when you walk out past the big loopy things, you set off the alarm. So anyway, we'll come back to that one because that one's a bit more complicated. Let's have a look at this one first. Let me open it up. I'm going to need my glasses. Here we go. Try and get into this. It's a bit tricky. Here we go. And here it is. So this is what you see on the inside of one of these. This bit is just a piece of plastic. Not very interesting. Get rid of that. And this bit is the business end that we're interested in. And you can see there's a sort of a copper-coloured coil. So let me put that under the microscope and show you what's actually going on with this. Right, so you have your coil of copper wire. So that's the top of it. And then at the bottom, let's move it up, there's the bottom of it. So it's a continuous coil of copper wire. And if you imagine it sort of starts here, and the copper goes down there, and then that bit of copper is wrapped round there, and then off it goes round there, and then it loops round and round and round and round and round and round, and eventually ends up back down here, and it comes out here. So you've got this coil of copper wire, which is then soldered here and here onto a little circuit board, and in the middle, this black blob in the middle is some sort of cement that's over the top of a tiny little microchip. And I took another one of these, and I've already sort of extracted the interesting bits. So I'm going to put this one away. Hopefully this one still works, because I actually need this one. So I'm going to put that one back there. And then this one, here's one I dismantled earlier. Let's pop this under. And I scraped off all the glue. It's a blue one. This blue one, this one, it's slightly easier to see. I scraped off all the glue from it's not quite focus. There we go. So I scraped off all the glue and the black goo, and in the middle there, right there, is a tiny little microchip. Okay, and basically what you have here is it's a very simple circuit. So that this wire here is connected via a sort of a slightly convoluted bit of metal sheet on the printed circuit to this side of the microchip, and this wire was connected to this side. And then if I zoom in on the microchip like this, I'll zoom right in because it is tiny, tiny, tiny. There, can you see that? I've actually completely mangled this. I'm going to turn the lighting up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the lighting so that it comes from different sides, and let's get the exposure better on this. It's a bit dark. You zoom in, it gets a lot darker. You need a lot more light. Turn the exposure up. Take a little while. There it is. So this thing here is a tiny little sliver, a tiny little speck of microchip made of silicon and other metals, and if I move the lighting around, you can see it kind of illuminates and shows up different parts of it, which sort of reflect the light in different ways. It's rather pretty, actually. That bit at the top comes up in nice, and there's this weird greeny red bit here. I have no idea what it is there, but basically, and this is the way all of this works. What you have here is you actually have a tiny little radio device. So RFID actually stands for radio frequency identification. And it's very simple. What happens is you have a radio signal that is picked up by this coil of wire. And it's just a very basic radio signal. There's no information carried in it. And as that coil of wire picks up that radio signal, it turns it into electricity. And that electricity is then used to power the microchip sitting right in the heart of this device. And that microchip has one job, and all its job is to take that electricity and to turn it back into a signal which it then pushes out into the coil of wire to create its own radio transmission. So it accepts radio waves, creates energy, uses the energy to create its own radio transmission, and that technically makes it what's known as a transponder. So this is a device that can accept radio waves and also emit them at the same, sort of not at the same time, but immediately afterwards. Now, if you imagine, let's go to this one here, the sort of the thinner one. So I'm going to take that one away now very carefully because I actually dislodged the chip. So this one, if I put this one underneath here, and we focus on this one's sort of nice and flat. It's actually quite sizable, but you can see if I sort of move around, we've got printed onto this thing these thin strips of aluminium. It's aluminium foil that's printed onto a sticker that's then stuck to the packaging. I'll go all the way around for you. And then these pink bits as well. And this actually forms, stuck to my finger. This still forms a coil, because if you imagine, here's the start of the aluminium strip. That aluminium strip sort of feeds off in that direction, goes all the way round, and when it comes back here, this aluminium strip, which then carries on here. And if you then you can follow it around and around and around and around, and finally you end up with it coming down. Oh, my head's in the way. Coming down right on the outside here to this big triangle of aluminium at the end. Which if I focus, that's about focus. It's quite difficult to focus on because you're getting weird reflections off it. Let's set the exposure as well. And then, so you've got this big loop, this big curly whirly of aluminium, so to speak. And then over the top of that, we've put this piece of pink stuff. Now, this is actually another sheet of aluminium foil that's not actually in contact with the foil beneath it, because there'll be some sort of, the pink is presumably not conductive to electricity, except right here, see that little sort of blemish? That's where they've sort of squidged through and they've joined the two layers electrically. So we have our big loop, which then is joined electrically here to the piece of pink aluminium foil, which then carries the electricity along here to this bit here. Now, in there must be a little electronic circuit board of something. And I'm going to see if I can reveal it. I've never done this before. This is the first time I've tried to do this. I'm just going to try and scrape away at this foil here to see if we can find what has to be in here. There's got to be some sort of little bit of circuitry. It's not. Is it there? Let's zoom in a little bit. I've probably just destroyed it. Oh no, there it is. There it is. I think I can see it. Is that it there? Oh, I've just scraped it off. Is that it? It's hard to know. There is a... It's almost impossible to know if I'm completely mangling this, which I am, obviously. But under there somewhere, I may have destroyed it in the process, there is a tiny little sliver of silicon, which was doing exactly the same as the little microchip in there. So what you end up, and that didn't work particularly well. I should have practiced. The trouble was I could only find one of these things in the house today. But presumably if you dig in the right place, you'll find this tiny little sliver of silicon, which does exactly the same as the one in here did. So what you have is a very simple device, accepts radio waves, turns it into a signal, which it then pushes back out, so that when you take this thing here, right? And you stick it onto something like, oh, I don't know, a packet of razor blades, for example, that people might, for example, want to pinch. They try to walk out with them, but the devices by the side of the doors activate this tiny little circuit here, which sends out a signal to say, I'm here, and it detects it and sets off the alarm. So how do they deactivate them? Well, the cool thing about these is the little electronic chips, you can actually write new information to it, so you can sort of erase it. And that's what they do. You know, when you buy something like this, what they're supposed to do is they sort of wipe it over something that's in the till, and that electronically erases the information that's on here. So then when you leave the shop, it doesn't set off the alarm. Right, that's all I've got time for. Let's go back to, that one didn't work particularly well. It's just too thin for me. But this one's quite fun. Let's zoom in on the little chip. I'll leave you with that tiny little chip, glowing green over there at the back, which is quite fun. My little electric chip. Right. So there you go. That's what you've got inside an RFID tag. As usual, thanks go to Zeiss for providing me with the microscopes. On Friday, we've got a special treat. We're going to be going back to the scanning electron microscope, and we'll be looking at a super high-powered magnification on some stuff. So please do join me then. That's all I've got time for. Thank you very much for joining me. Bye-bye.